So we're continuing Unit 40 of the Morenu units. For the Menucha of Sir Moshe Montefiore and Surname Dangur. This week, Rabbi Dr. Avram Levy, who has done many great things for the Montefiore and Dangur groups, has passed away. We'll learn for his Menucha as well. So we were talking about the difference between items dismantling and breaking on Shabbat. That if they break, we have to discuss at what point do you say this is no longer functional, this is something that people throw in the garbage, and therefore is no longer part of the human realm. But if they're dismantled, the question may be different. The Ran disagrees and says that if it's functional, it's still useful, if it can still be used on Shabbat, it won't be muktzah. But if it's not functional, it's not. The same standards. Tosfot says, no, as long as I intend on returning it to its place, it never reaches the point where I'm returning it to nature. I'm putting it in the garbage. I don't reach that point. So if I have the door of the armoire falls off, so the Ran would say that it would become muktzah. Of course, what are you going to do with it? Well, unless you could lean it against the armoire, or you could use it as a table or whatever. But as long as it doesn't have a normal proper use as is, it will be muktzah. And Tosfot disagree and say that since it's still the armoire's door, so yes, you can't connect it on Shabbat, but you can still carry it around. Now you'll note that in many of the things we've been discussing, when we discuss something getting dismantled, I kept on mentioning, well, you can't reapply it on Shabbat, right? If I have a button fall off on Shabbat, I can't sew it back on Shabbat. If the glasses fall apart on Shabbat, so I can't reassemble them, I can't reassemble them on Shabbat, etc. Which raises another issue, a different problem, which is there could be a concern that moving these things around or trying to use them on Shabbat will lead to trying to fix them. And that's what the Gemara discusses right over here in Daf Kuf Lamed Chet Amud Bet on page 5. Tanya, קירה שנשמטה אחת מארווחותיה, מותר לטלטלה, 2 אסור. רב אמר אפילו חד נמי אסור, גזרה שמא יתקע. So I have a קירה, and the problem is I have a stove of sorts. Now I could use it. If it loses one leg, I can still kind of balance it and it'll still stand. If it loses 2, it won't be balanced, and then I can't really use it. Once you can't use it, it becomes muktzah. So I can't carry it around because it becomes muktzah. It's not fun. You can't use it.
And if it loses 4, it becomes a closet door.
What?
If it loses 4, it becomes a closet door.
Correct. Very good. Now Rav says no, but I have another concern. Because what's the problem? The problem is if I want to use this stove, so I'm trying to balance it on one side. But I'm sure most of you have had the annoying experience of having something that's not properly balanced. Like if you have a chair that's not properly balanced, etc. And it can be very, very annoying. And then you'll inadvertently try to reconnect it. So he says you're not allowed because you might reconnect it. Now, the criteria seems to be something that you'd find that you'd find annoying if you try to use it. That seems to be the context. So we need to see how far do you go with this. Says the Meiri. Let's just have a look at some of the Rishonim, the way the Rishonim applied the Caesar. So the Meiri says, just in the second attempt, the truth is the Meiri just explains what I said, so he's fine. Let's see, the Trumat Hadeshen says a similar thing. What happens if I have a long bench now, and the leg falls off of the end, or 2 legs, a leg or 2 falls off the end? So now I can't sit on it, right? Because I'll be sitting like this, right? Okay. But I could lean it against something else. I can lean it on one of these chairs, and then I'll have a bench, right? Is that okay? So he asks this question: could I lean it up against, right, have the end sit on another bench, and that way, or another chair, whatever, and that way I'll receive those legs? Right? It's a good answer, right? Are you allowed? Well, it is a good question. וכן ראיתי כתוב על שם אחד מהגדולים, right. אחד מהגדולים שאסור, והביא ראיה מפרק תולין, כי רש"י נשמטה מערכותיה, אך אסור לטלטל, גזר השם היתקע, והיינו אך ממש, לכאורה, it's similar. אמנם אני אראה לחלק, דעתם לא מצי להושיבה בלא ערך שנפלה, ולכך גזרינם. כאן אפשר להניח על ספסל אחר, ולא גזרין דילמה יתקע. So
that's not convincing because then the Tanakama in the first place of the Braita would have said that also with one.
Excellent, and that's exactly what the translation says right after.
Oh.
Yeah, well done. אך מדמחלק בתחילה התם בין 1 ל-2, משמענה מידה אחת, הקעתי חז ידי סמיכה, אפילו הכי מסכן לאיסור. Okay, it's not exactly the way you said it, but it is, right? All right, so let's explain what he said. He's saying like this. On the one hand, here's the question. I have this, has it ever happened to you that you were sitting, I don't know, in a meeting or a big drash or whatever, and the chair and the legs of the chair weren't exactly balanced?
No.
Never? I was going to say, you haven't been in Israel long enough. But you're saying not in Israel, right?
Yeah, well, you sit down at the table, the restaurant, the table's like going.
Right. So what do you do? So what do you do?
Napkins and a match.
Exactly. So you don't fix the table, right? You don't get out your saw and start sawing off the edge of whatever, right? The edge of the table or the edge of the chair or whatever, right? You take a bunch of napkins. I thought it's an Israeli thing. I wasn't sure if I'm allowed to say this, but you take a bunch of napkins and you stick it and you shove them under until you find the proper balance, right? So it says translation, lichora, that should be the set. Lichora, that should have been the solution, right? The solution, like there should have been some kind of simple solution that would circumvent the melacha here. So on the one hand, I have a very simple solution for this bench. He says, look, the bench, I'm not worried you're going to connect the leg because you're not going to connect the leg. You're just going to lean it on another chair. Right. But then he says, wait, but that's true about the Gemara itself too. The Gemara says, well, if it loses two, there's nothing to do with it. Well, you can balance it somehow. With one, you can balance it more comfortably, right? So he says, they're locking up the office. He says this distinction between the 1 and the 2 informs us that if it's missing one, you could balance it. You could shove a bunch of napkins under, right? You can find a way to balance it. But the Gemara doesn't say that. The Gemara thinks that initially and then says, yes, but it'll be annoying, so you'll be tempted to reconnect it. Since it'll be annoying and you'll want to reconnect it, the fact that you have other solutions doesn't help. That seems to be what the translation says. And therefore, something that falls apart, and well, let's think what criteria would be relevant here. So let's have a look at some of the criteria. Jump over to page 6.
It uses a skateboard ramp.
There's a skateboard ramp.
Very
good. In your book, I wrote on Shabbat edition, which is a commentary to edition. So I write Tzorich Iyun. Why didn't he say could be used by the local teenagers as a skateboard? Sorry, were you also skateboarding? So says the Taz. נראה לי דין נשמת הרגל כבר ואין כאן אותו רגל כלל, אלא הספסל עומד כך בלא רגל ההיא מקודם, אין איסור לסמוך אותו על ספסל אחר. דכאן אין שייך שמא יתקע. כך לנו דעתי באיסור זה של חומות רבנן, לצד בו להקל במקום שאין חשש שמא יתקע, בפרט במקום שהוא צורך בית משתה בשבת. So specifically he was saying what you need the benches for oneg Shabbat. He says what happens if the chair leg broke? If you don't have the chair leg or this bench, right? The bench leg, if you don't have the bench leg, so there's no chashash, meaning I was emphasizing how annoying it is to try to balance a bench like that. He says, yes, and then you might take the bench leg, but if you don't have the bench leg, then you should be good, right? So the Mishnah Brura says, "Lemaise im nishba regel lo shayach bo shem eitka." You're gonna have to get a new leg. We're not worried you're going to get you're going to start carving out a new leg on Shabbat. We're only worried that you're going to reconnect you reconnect the old leg. So that's one criteria. The first criteria is you have to be able to reassemble it on Shabbat. Technically, you have to be able to reassemble it. Let's go on to the next criteria. Says Rav Zilber. Rav Zilber asks, what is the difference between the two cases we were talking about until now? We kept on mentioning the armoire door, where everyone agrees that the cupboard door doesn't become a K'tzan Shabbat. Tosfot, because I'm going to reconnect it later on, and the Ran, because it can still be used by leaning against. So let's definitely ignore Tosfot for a moment and talk about the Ran. The Ran says as long as I can lean it up against the cupboard, it's okay, right? Why are we worried there, Shemetka? That I might reconnect it. Why are we worried when it comes to the stove or whatever that kila is exactly? I'm not worried about the cupboard door. That's his question. So he says, you see in the middle of the second line, that's Rav Zilber's question on the bottom of page 6, in the Shut Az Nidberu, B'niyad davka delet, שאינו מפריע לעיקר השימוש בכלי, אלא לשמירה על חפצי הכלי. אבל רגל שבלעדו אין לכלי אותה המידה של קודם שפירש לגזור. אם כן נמדד הדבר לפי הצורך באותו החלק. So he says like this. After the cupboard door fell off, is the cupboard no longer a cupboard? Is it still functioning as a cupboard?
Yes.
Is there any problem with its function as a cupboard?
Yes.
Not really, right?
It's open.
Depends on the right, but it's still fun. I mean, the main point of the cupboard is not to hide your things, right? All right, so center in Achinami. So yours will be muktzah. Now you're happy, right? The main point of the cupboard is to so things will have their place, right? To store and so things will be organized, right? Now, so if the door isn't as functional as it was before, the cupboard is still a cupboard. But if I have this bench that's just swinging and making me nuts, right? If I can't sit on the bench comfortably, it's not a bench. If I can't balance my pot, right, whatever the context of the stove there was, but I can't balance my pot here, so I can't work with this. So it's no longer functional at all. That's the difference. If it becomes, in other words, we have three cases. We have a case where it's not functional. It becomes not functional at all, and then we're back to the Tosfot and the Ran. We have a case where it's completely functional. And we have a case where it's functional, but it's terribly annoying. In the case where it's functional but terribly annoying, in that case, you have the Gzera. Functional meaning I could lean it up against one side, but it'll irk me all the time. And therefore, I'm concerned that I might want to connect it. How crucial is that part to the utility of the entire thing? Sorry?
If the part is still here.
Right. So what happens if I have a washing cup and one of the handles falls off? And I could reconnect the handles. I can't on Shabbat because I need a screw. Still works. Why? So it depends on how annoying it is to wash without the handle. Right? That's the point. If you could wash conveniently enough without the handle, you'll be fine. So it's fine. But if it's going to irk you, if it's going to be annoying, then it'll be, right? So that's what it says here. I said washing cup, but whatever, it could be any handle, right? If it's hard to use it without the handle, then if I have a very hot pot, so I could somehow cope with that and the handle falls off. I could use an oven glove and somehow balance it, whatever, but it could be dangerous, right?
So the way you're talking, I just want to make sure I understand. Are we really saying it's that subjective to the person, to the individual?
I don't think we're talking about subjectivity. I think we're talking about an objective measure of how much it irks
Then I like.
the broad population, I wouldn't
Whatever
say.
bizarre example, my mom is constantly holding hot things. She has no feeling in her hands. It doesn't bother her at all. It's like, so for her, it's like, then none of this would be an issue, and maybe that's her objective truth. Somebody else who's incredibly CDO, that's like really OCD that you have to alphabetize it. It's everything could be tremendously irksome, and that may really honestly be an issue with them.
So that's a fair point. That's a fair point.
No,
No, you're right. No, you're right. I didn't think about that. Where, how far, right? The criteria, I agree. The criteria here does have to be defined more clearly. Because I can have a chair that if the thing is just a tiny bit, one person say whatever, right? Next person will go nuts. Right.
Xavier is normally something general, now you don't go on some kind of personal level.
Right, but that's what I want to understand, because we keep mentioning more if it bother, it's just, I just want to make sure we understand.
If it disturbs the use, now what is the use? Define the use. So you say most people would avoid using a hot pot that doesn't have one of the handles because you're gonna end up burning yourself or someone or falling, something bad will happen. So you're gonna avoid using it, right? You can, but you won't. But you won't be happy with it. You won't. If your chant is in there, so you'll find a way. There's a way, chant. But you'd avoid using such a pot because if the chant drops, then you'll be in trouble, right? So, etc. Right? So I think generally, so it's a bit of a problem. In other words, you might say that Rov Bnei Adam. Now, who's Rov Bnei Adam? It's kind of hard to define what is the norm when it comes to something so specific, right? So how unbalanced does the chair need to be? Now again, so the chairs I'm referring to don't really have, we go back to the Taz, right? What are you going to do? You're going to start shaving the edge off. No one's going to do that, right? So that's not an issue either, but theoretically, right? Ekronit, what imbalance are we talking about? How imbalanced? I agree. I think it does require better criteria. Since Rav Zilber says the whole point is whether I say the functionality is still there, but it will be irksome, right? But it'll be annoying. It'll be so annoying they're just going to say, "Yeah, let's take it back in." Right now, how many people in the population will do that? I don't know. It depends on the case. It's a bit hard to define, right? You see the last line in Rav Zilber. I just like the wording, right? The can change פרקו מותר לטלטל אפילו באלו ששייך שם היתקע, וכיוון שאינו מפריע לעיקר השימוש, אינו בהול. לא גזרין שישכח ויתקע. Right? What is bahul? I think it's like upset, right?
Right, it's like taken from the world of there's a fire, right?
Right. Right. Yeah.
Something that's gonna
it's gonna throw you off your game. You can just get upset and just yalla, right? That kind of thing. So have a look on the next page 7. Some more from Nazanin Bur, same idea. Here he's talking about Ashkenazi Sefer Torah. Do we have some Ashkenazim around here? A bunch. So Ashkenazi Sefer Torah, he says, what happens if the handles fall off? What? You had that once? If the handles fall off, right? Right. So we have I think we're talking about where there is the wooden part on the edge on each end. Right.
And you have the little roller area, and then
and then you have the handles on top.
and the part that can fall off easily.
that does. But the
Right.
handle. That's not a handle. It's
So I think he's talking about not the wooden part that's like
something.
that's so that there's a wooden end that's sewed onto the right, and then you connect the two, and then you connect to both sides, the top and bottom of the Sefer Torah. You connect the handles to that wooden thing.
Right.
What happened? They fell off, right?
It just makes Haggadah a little more harder.
No, so he says more than that. So he says the problem is that how are you going to stand it in the Aron Kodesh? You're going to get it's going to be annoying,
So and it has to stand, I mean, in that case, if it's.
He says if the top falls off, is what he says. If the top falls off, it's hard to do glila. No, you'll cope. You'll figure out your glila. You won't do hagba. You'll just roll it on the table and close it out, and you'll put it away, and everything will be fine. But if one of the bottom ones falls off, what are you going to do? How are you going to stand it up? So he says you're not allowed to carry it.
Lean it against another Sefer Torah, or lean
Right.
it against the wall.
But that's true. But that's also
So you're
true
saying you just
about
leave it out on the table all night?
right. But this is the all day because you
All
don't
day,
need Torah at night.
right.
But right, but this is an amazing. I mean, I'm not even sure. The truth is, I'd like to go back and read the whole tshuva because what are we talking about? They took the Sefer Torah out. They read and whoops, the bottom handle fell off, and now what?
And it's still not gonna be able to be stood for at least a few days until it gets fixed.
Right. That's what are you going to do? No, for Seder, but after Shabbos you can take it. But what can you do now? You can't return to the Aron Kodesh.
I didn't get it for them.
The problem
That
what?
does sound more like Delta. You'll lean it, just like you'll lean the door against the this, so you'll lean the Sefer Torah against.
You just wrap it in the palace.
Oh, you like Ben Thomas needed there. No, that's sad, but that's not what the Friedman calls are saying something different.
Yeah.
They're saying just lean it up against something else. What?
Some things we do that anyway now in Kodesh. If there's we've got no
That's
Kodesh
fine.
that's like it's slippery on the bottom. It doesn't hold the Sefer Torah very well. You lean it, and I didn't design this that in Kodesh. Don't look at me like that. You lean it against. It's okay.
Yeah, it still has the top ones.
And sometimes it leans on one. Sometimes it leans on one handle, anyways. If you like.
Yeah.
It's all balanced.
It's not scared. Not scared.
I'm just scared the next person opens it up.
Yeah.
Beseder. So, all right. So you'll disagree with Vasil, but I'd like to go back to the tshuva and see like what exactly we're talking about. You're saying the normal use. I think the Friedman Cross point is deeper. It's not just a matter of you'll tell me if it's true or not. If I got your point, it's not just a matter of well, you could lean it against something, so just do it. It's the normal use is by leaning it against something else.
At least normal enough, and
Yeah, I've said
and going back to like the chiluk of that he said in the previous tshuva, like like ikara shimush or not, like it sounds more like the kind of thing that if the door breaks off, you can use it in a less comfortable way without needing to feeling compelled to fix it this second.
Mm-hmm.
And like I think here also you can. It's like a little bit annoying, but you can it doesn't prevent your.
I hear. Yeah, makes sense since that's the normal way of using, and also the central use of the Torah obviously is not to stand it up in Kodesh. That's what it does most of the time. Beseder. One last point. So what is the Easter?
Would you not even be able to read it now? It fell off while you were.
That's what that's
not
what
when you're
saying.
not at the Hagba. Like
Yeah, Rishon.
yeah. Then what?
The first guy that was holding on to the thing and made a very vehement Baruch Hashem Varach, right? Oh, oops. And ended up with the handle in his hand. Now what? So now you can't read. So Rafi says, so covered with the talis and whatever, figure it out. But no, it happens. Beseder. What now? All right. Last question. What exactly is the Isur? This Gzeira that you're not allowed to carry things that fell apart because you might reconnect, you might reassemble them, you might reconnect them, right? You might reapply them. What exactly is the Gzeira? So the Chora, when we're talking about the stove, right? We're talking about two things. The bench, we're talking about the chair, right? We're talking about sitting on the bench. Am I allowed to sit on the bench? If
We're always worried about.
if I have a chair and if it has four legs and one leg falls apart, I could reconnect it, but I won't. I'll just sit like this. I'll be okay.
Sit like the cat.
Right?
Sit like the Torah.
Exactly. So, or I could move something else and put it under here and then sit. Am I allowed to sit? What's the Isur exactly? So you'll know the Gemara said, let's just It's an interesting point. The Gemara said that mutar or asul letaltila. Am I allowed to use it? What about using it? Is that allowed? See what I'm saying? Because you'd say, wait, l'chora, based on what we saw by Rav Zilber just now, the definition of the Isur should be whatever I'd find annoying, right? So if I'm sitting on the chair, I'm going to find this annoying at one point. I'm not going to manage to sit like this to the whole chair, right? I'm going to find it annoying at one point, and I might just snap, right? Or then do the opposite. Might just fix something. But that's not what the Gemara said. And therefore, the Eli Rabbah says, no. The Eli Rabbah says the whole Isur is only to carry it. If you want to use it where it is in its place, you're allowed to use it.
Sounds weird.
Just because that's not the Gzera.
It's weird because it seems like it's not a Gzera and Chot Muktzeh. It's like Gzera and Boneh.
Nachon.
Or Machel Patish.
Nachon.
So like it should be in the use. Not just in the...
Nachon. So much so that that you say, why is
A
this
little louder, please?
Oh yeah, of course. I was going to repeat what your son wisely said here, that the first question all of you should have asked, those who know me well enough should have said, wait, this is in the wrong unit. So yes, you have a broken kli here and a broken kli there, but that's not how you work. That's not how, right? We know you, B'tzalel. That's not how you work. You will go for the lunge connection. This is not Chod Muktzeh at all. This should be unit 50, not unit 40. Right? That's how we roll around here, right? So what's it doing here? The interesting thing is that if we see the Gemara says if it loses 2 legs, it becomes muktzah. No. Even if it loses one leg, what? Right? If it loses 2 legs, it becomes muktzah. And it says no, even if it loses 1 leg. Right? So we've applied the idea and definition of muktzah, of something broken, to things that I might fix. Right? That's the Gemara itself did. It's not my fault. I brought a Gemara about muktzah. It just happened to say, well, the Gzera is real, mishum boneh, okay, patish, whichever, right? But so that's what the Eli Rabbah says. Yeah, so
Is this muskam?